All right, so a few months ago at a gallery and at a market that I went to, sorry, I didn't even say what this topic is about. Okay, so I'm going to share some tips if you experience migraine aura or if you know anybody who experiences synesthesia or symptoms like that where they see colors and stuff like that, or blurs in their vision. Oftentimes, so I'm going to share the tips that I use for myself and that I've used for clients of mine and friends of mine that were struggling with adapting and also with accepting that now their vision wasn't trustworthy, because that's what makes you doubt at first, and it makes it very easy for you to go into those doubt cycles and start to really struggle with daily activities like walking, even because you don't trust your vision. So, since I still drive, I try to keep my driving to a minimal because I do get very anxious and it causes a lot of other symptoms related to other problems that I have. So, I really reduced my driving in the last couple years. However, because of this eye wandering off and making me dizzy, because since it's got that permanent aura in it and it's trying to fill in that space, it makes me very dizzy. And that's always been the case. This eye has always given me trouble since I started driving. And it made it very difficult for me to want to drive. However, when I would ride bicycles, it was also a huge problem. I got hit by cars a lot. And especially coming out of driveways because I wouldn't see them. And so they'd hit that back tire and you'd go flying over those handlebars. So it's when I started to drive, nobody understood, because the more they checked my eyes, the more they saw that my eyes were fine. My neurologist understood, but there's not much they can do. There's no glasses that can fix that in your eye. You can put a patch, but it strains the other eye. But when I do drive distances, that's what I do. I put a patch on this eye and I trust this eye. So let me show you how my setup is. I've got these things hanging right there off of the mirror, and in the old car I had them hanging off of there, because the windshield was different, so my eyes would wander over here and it would make me very nauseous when I was driving, so I'd hang it from the passenger. On this one I just have it on the mirror, and you see that, oh, how did I get my finger? Oh, there we go. Okay, so this little thing right here, it moves a lot while I'm driving. So when my eye is trying to wander towards this window over here or this mirror unintentionally, causing that sense of vertigo, this distracts it to come back to the middle. So only when I'm turning my neck is that the case, because that level of strain can trigger neck tension, and also, for me, sometimes even cluster headaches, because they've been trying to notice all my triggers, but that one in itself is one of them. And so this right here is one of those sun catchers. So all of these create little rainbows. And so this is the one I want to talk about the most. So this one helps me drive, but this one is the one I want to talk about. When you struggle with synesthesia, it's one of the scariest things, because even when people are talking, the colors around them, especially if you're out in the sun, can be terrifying. And I always tell people, they tell me what your personality is, because essentially it's not that I believe that it's your aura, or that I believe, because there is people who believe that it's telling the truth or things like that, but it's because the colors do change based on tone. Okay, so let's talk about tone. For me, music is what causes huge synesthesia, especially drums, okay? And that's when I started to notice it the most, and I started trying to seek help from my doctors again, because I knew that the neurological symptoms had progressed. And so music is a big one for me. So when people's tone changes and you're lying to me and telling me everything's all right, but your tone is telling me it's not. You don't have to tell me what is going on in your life if you don't trust me and I'm not part of your inner circle. But don't lie to me and tell me everything is all right, because your level of awareness of your own emotions is going to dictate whether or not I can trust you with my own emotions. So you're asking me to open up to you, but if you're doing this, so a lot of people will misinterpret that because they have very minimal education around neurological conditions and how much therapy kids like myself have been in, because I started having these symptoms, especially the image flipping, when I started getting migraines when I was 6. So it's really hard to diagnose what everything that is going on, especially with the types of parents that I had. And the fact that even in my IEP notes, it's written more as like my seeing the words backwards and stuff like that. In the notes that I read from, I think it was first grade, she wrote on there, she stopped making up words. I wasn't making up words. That's how I saw them. So by 3rd grade, they had put me in a reading program where they gave you the books, because that teacher noticed that it was something else. But it's like, dude, even the people who are evaluating, this is why parents need to be involved in the evaluations. This is why you need to trust your child when they're telling you they don't see, even if you don't know. Because my mom is very ignorant about medical conditions, and that's the thing. That when I would bring these things up to her, they didn't want me to be labeled with any medical conditions, because my dad said that that's how his great-grandmother fucked them up. But that's not true. Your ignorance is what made it impossible for us to get properly evaluated for all this shit. Is my dyslexia something that's there all the time and I just don't notice it because I do that with my spelling all the fucking time? Or is it something that just gets exacerbated, or is it something that's only there when I get my migraines? My writing is always like that, so I'm assuming the dyslexia is always there, but because I'm still struggling to get a proper evaluations since over a decade ago, because I can still get by. Now that my migraines have gotten progressively worse, so has that. The exacerbations are extreme, and it makes it very difficult to get along in daily life because the forcing of my vision to try to read and comprehend what I'm reading creates harsher migraines. Where I'm going with this. We find ways to reduce that fear because, yes, anxiety can also exacerbate these conditions. When I lived with my friend and she was being evaluated for dementia and things like that, and her son kept insisting that he just wanted his mom to have whatever she wanted, quality of life, whatever. There's a limitation what you can do of quality of life if the person isn't willing to take medication, because essentially, if you're having seizures, that shit's going to get worse. So when she would have seizures and those colors would happen, she would go into these fear modes and she wanted to smoke more. Yes, marijuana is medicine, but if you're going from joint to joint to joint, you're not getting enough oxygen. So she kept insisting that she needed oxygen. So she burned herself because she would not listen. She would not listen. So when I went on vacation, she burned herself because she would not listen. That's no longer quality of life. That's dangerous. And these are the situations where we as adults, seeing grown adults that are no longer taking good care of themselves, we have a choice to make. You can either help them understand why this is not okay, or you can find ways to reduce that fear so that they can gain that confidence on their own. So I started reducing the fear. I started hanging those off of all of the windows so that when that would happen, she would think that it was that. And that way we can focus on the other symptoms that she was having. But the frustrating part is that there was a lot of stress involved in that household. And the fact that she didn't want to leave the partner that was causing her that stress, that I wish that women would understand how many neurological problems you can develop from holding all that shit in. She'd get frustrated and she's just, you can meditate all you fucking want, but if your partner is causing you stress that triggers And I wasn't helping because I couldn't. I couldn't pretend like she could. She wanted me there because it made her life easier, but I could not pretend like she could. And that was causing her stress as well. That's when you got to walk away. You have to realize your limitations. But if you can reduce the stress for synesthesia and things like that, that's one of the big ones. But you also have to recognize that if your client or your family member that is also having dementia symptoms is progressing, one of the big ones that makes symptom progression seem like it's symptom progression is if they're not hydrating properly. So if you have a family member that is drinking a lot of coffee, and if they struggle with sleep at night, that's when, and it made it easy because I don't sleep regular hours anyways. So I could get her doing relaxation things and silencing and reducing the light in the house, because for people who struggle with that level of insomnia and light sensitivity, this is as dark as I can get my car. So in her house, we had it as dark as possible. So reducing the light would reduce the nervous system. So within 3 or 4 hours of him going to sleep, I could reduce her nervous system for her to also fall asleep. However, in that time, she was always insistent with that coffee. So I had to be on top of her of drinking juice or water or the jelly drops. And she would get frustrated because it would fill her belly and then her coffee would go bad. And I see the behavior. She didn't understand why she would get so frustrated with the jelly drops. So she would just say it's because it causes pain in your stomach. No, it's not. Because I would see her every time she'd get frustrated. So what I started doing was I started replacing her coffee cup. I'd wake up before she would and I'd replace her coffee cup with a fresh one, and I would take the bad one away. Sometimes with people whose memory is going like that, it's best to get them hydrated first to see where the symptoms are coming from. A lot of the clumsiness comes from lack of hydration in those cases as well. So you can reduce the fear by putting artwork that reduces the fear. Also a lot of natural art is helpful. You can reduce the nervous system reaction because synesthesia for me is through sound. So if I reduce the sound input, the synesthesia is also reduced. If I reduce the light input, the migraines and the brain fog also gets reduced. And if I reduce the smell significantly, the GI and nausea symptoms are significantly reduced, because that level of vomiting, by the time you're just gagging, it's just contractions. Your system is contracting, and when it causes bouts of colitis or diarrhea, it's a burning sensation because it feels like ulcers burning through your gut as it's doing that. And in some cases, colitis is doing that. And I have ulcers in my stomach, so I feel like some of those contractions in my stomach are caused by the irritation of those ulcers when I go into that. And that's what she would get. She could no longer vomit after her surgeries. So that hydration is important. A lot of times we feel hungry when we're dehydrated. So she was asking for food. So one, keeping track what time they ate, so that you know whether it's snack time or whether it's hungry. So if you're there's a lot that goes involved with taking care of an individual whose memory is going. So if you keep track of their meals and their snacks and you're seeing, and if they need their blood sugar checked and stuff like that, making sure they're getting their snacks on time, because my grandpa was bad about that. Hydration is a big one. Big one. Hydration. If they're asking for food and it's not around that snack time, offer the jelly drops, because then you're getting those hydration and they think they're eating things like Jello. And it's not really about lying. I hate it because it does feel like manipulation to me. So if you're somebody who struggles with the fact that you're manipulating your parent into hydrating themselves, I'm sorry to say it, but jelly drops are lifesavers for memory clients. They're lifesavers. It sucks, but unfortunately hydration is a big one, and it's not like we can force hospitals to approve IV hydration and stuff like that for individuals like that, because essentially the goal is to continue to get that that gut moving, especially if you have slow gut motility. You want that hydration to keep that moving, because if things aren't moving, infections can happen and so many other things can happen. So it's encouraging of continuing to use these things. I get so frustrated when people tell me to guard certain things, including like my throat, because of the swallowing issues I've been having. And I do a lot of exercises with singing that have made me lose my voice a lot because of what's going on. And they don't understand that if I don't do those exercises, like I took like, I think I'm on week 2 of stopping the singing exercises because the music was causing so much synesthesia, that the reduction is actually making me go hoarse, because it's not getting the exercise that it needs every day, which is making it difficult to, I'm back on shakes and stuff. So we have to be aware that all of these areas of our body are muscles, including our digestive system. It's made of a muscle and neurological, synapses and all that stuff. I can't think right now. The words are not coming to me, but you know what I mean. But they're muscles, ligaments, connective tissues, and all that good stuff working together. Any of that system not being used, the reduction of use, actually, it's why you get hunger pains. If you've been starving for a long period of time, you can't just go and eat. It's actually dangerous. You have to gradually start eating again. After surgery, that's why you have to gradually start eating again. It's intentional, because everything has to wake up. If it doesn't, you can cause all kinds of problems. So keep that aware. If you want to see what's causing, and this is not medical advice, but if you want to see what's causing your family member's issue, if they're having memory problems, watch their hydration, watch their meals, watch their behavior for fear. What is causing their fear? Because sometimes vision problems are not vision problems, they're brain problems. And when they start being brain problems, you have to be on top of the changes in what their eyes are seeing, so that you can tell their neurologist and you can help them advocate for themselves, because otherwise they'll keep sending them to psychiatry until finally psychiatry is like, hey, you know what, we've done all we can. It's your turn to actually properly evaluate this person, and that can take time after you've been sent through the psychiatry loop. Okay, so reduce the fear. That's a big one when your vision starts going. And if you're seeing a lot of fear and a lot of clumsiness, and the vision, they keep telling you it's the vision, but doctors keep gaslighting you, telling you it's not the vision, go to psychiatry, talk to a neurologist, and start the process of getting evaluated for issues in your eyeballs. Because even if it's not a serious problem, it's something that you're going to have to learn to live with, and learn that it's your new normal. And that means that the adaptation for your new normal can be terrifying, especially if you're still trying to live a normal life and do normal things. Okay? I love you, and have a beautiful day.